Except for the humans. When our coalition's exploration drones discovered the Sol system, we understood from the preliminary scans that there was little of significance present. Most of the planets were entirely devoid of any form of life, consisting merely of a few barren rocks and gas giants. The only noteworthy planet was the third one, which scans indicated was teeming with life. Over the following days, our probe surveyed Earth. Although it struggled to see much through the vast amounts of space debris that cluttered the planet, likely remnants from failed launches, it managed to gather some intelligence regarding the surface. There was a rich diversity of flora and fauna, along with an abundance of liquid water, which was surprisingly interspersed with patches of stagnant debris islands. Additionally, a sentient species known as humans appeared to be responsible for the somewhat prevalent structures and the aforementioned space debris. Scans revealed that there were approximately 8 billion individuals of this species. After a couple of weeks of surface scanning, the probe continued its journey, as its primary mission was to explore a newly discovered system believed to be rich in resources, and it would not be deterred by a remote planet on the outskirts of nowhere. While the humans had realized their potential to venture into space, the considerable amount of debris surrounding their planet suggested that their attempts had largely been unsuccessful. Most scientists believed that the humans would require another 400 years before they could construct ships capable of leaving Earth, and even longer to achieve FTL travel independently. We had never encountered such a lamentably slow species before. Most species that attempted to reaching space would instantly become the primary objective for those who could, breaking free from the limitations of their home planet. However, for the humans, a conflict later erupted between two member races of the coalition, the formidable and aggressive Zanzi and the relatively newer, much more peaceful Danik. It was widely recognized that the Danik were the victims in this conflict, yet it was also understood that they would incur the wrath of the Zanzi's powerful military if anyone attempted to intervene. Consequently, the Zanzi ships effortlessly devastated and rendered one world uninhabitable, capturing another planet with minimal effort, and leveraged their influence in the Senate to persuade their allies and some undecided races to expel the Danik from the coalition. No one came to the defense of the Danik. They were a nascent member race lacking representation in the government and possessing few notable attributes. With a population of only 10 billion, a nearly non-existent military, which may have contributed to the Zanzi's invasion, and merely a handful of faster-than-light capable ships, they were almost as vulnerable as the humans, as one senator remarked, and it was deemed more prudent to relocate them to the Sol system to test the humans. After all, it would be a waste of resources to dispatch a truly significant race and a new fleet to welcome the humans. Why not utilize the Danik instead? Thus, the 52 large Danik colony ships, along with numerous smaller civilian freighters and transports, all carrying their share of the 7 billion survivors of the war who had not been enslaved by the Zanzi, made their own jump to the Sol system, without any support and with no possibility of retreat. Their vessels were filled to capacity with refugees, individuals who had no home to return to. No one would. We are pleased to welcome them in the condition they were found, although it seems that several weeks passed before our second probe reached the Sol system. This probe was specifically designed to investigate the interactions between the human and Danik races. By the time it arrived, it had gathered information regarding the developments that had occurred. The human governments of Earth, and indeed there were numerous ones, had integrated the Danik into their society. Their planet was bustling with construction, and approximately half of the ships that had reached their destination remained in orbit. Most of the space debris had been surprisingly cleared away. However, it would take some time for them to fully adapt, as no one could manage such a large influx of refugees at once, except, as we discovered, the humans. The few researchers assigned to monitor the drone footage observed that the inhabitants of Earth adapted remarkably swiftly to their new circumstances. They erected new structures at an astonishing pace, employing massive machines that could print entire cities in just a few weeks. Danik freighters, which had previously transported cargo, were now operating in the asteroid belt, extracting materials to construct new buildings and, most unexpectedly, new ships. The humans had seemingly mastered the art of reverse engineering nearly every technology that the Danik possessed, from particle shields to FTL drives. Vehicles that were once wheeled or tracked were modified to incorporate anti-gravity nodes. New, uniquely designed ships, purportedly of human origin, were constructed, and to our astonishment, they proved to be even faster than the Danik ships that preceded them. We had never witnessed such industriousness on any other planet. Typically, it took months to fabricate a new ship, and an additional month if it. The objective was to possess an FTL drive, which were relatively uncommon across the Coalition. Most Coalition vessels depended on sunlight engines, as FTL drives were too intricate to mass produce and prohibitively expensive to standardize. Only affluent intersystem traders or large military carriers and battleships were equipped with them, while the majority of smaller ships, such as cruisers and frigates, lacked this technology entirely. On this previously overlooked planet, new ships would be constructed and launched within a week, while some would remain in orbit around Earth or the nearby Moon. Most would promptly utilize their FTL drives, creating a rift in time and space, venturing into the unknown. By this time, our leaders were becoming increasingly curious and anxious about this new threat to their way of life. The Zanzi generals were outspoken about seizing whatever enabled humans to operate so efficiently, and our Senate acquiesced, permitting the Zanzi to form a strike force to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. This force comprised 100 massive ships, including carriers, destroyers, battleships, frigates, and even a planet-killing dreadnought, all equipped with sufficient firepower to easily subjugate another member race if they so desired. Thousands of small fighters, along with hundreds of troop transports and landing craft, were prepared for the eventual takeover of planet Earth. A single planet stood against the might of a full Zanzi fleet, which was a trivial challenge regardless of the level of preparedness, and there was no indication that Earth was ready, having only faced the Danik for a year since their arrival at the doorstep. Most races would capitulate immediately, hoping to escape with their lives, as the Danik did after merely 2 days of conflict. Except, certainly, as soon as the Zanzi fleet approached the largest gas giant in the system to regroup and initiate their assault, a small fleet comprising a dozen cruiser-class vessels gathered near Earth to protect their home. As the Zanzi fleet neared the asteroid belt, the human fleet steadily increased in size until it equaled that of the Zanzis, with additional ships arriving from seemingly nowhere. When the Zanzi crossed the belt, the human fleet accelerated to confront them midway on a small red planet known as Mars. Upon the collision of both forces, the battle proved to be more balanced than anticipated. Although the Zanzi ships had previously possessed inadequate shields and weaponry just a year earlier, the human cruisers and battleships appeared to be on par with their Zanzi counterparts, exchanging devastating blows. The Zanzi fleet was reduced to 50 ships, including their flagship Dredden and several carriers designed for planetary subjugation, while they faced 60 human cruisers and destroyers, all determined to repel the enemy. Ultimately, the Zanzi opted to retreat, with the Dredden turning away from Earth in an attempt to jump back to friendly territory before being destroyed. However, before it and the remaining ships could escape, the 3 largest human carriers deployed a wave of fast troop transports, each numbering nearly 500, targeting a specific Zanzi vessel. While the fleet was in the process of retreating, they failed to notice the transports breach their hulls and secure themselves before jumping away to a nearby Allied system carrying human Marines. The scouting probe observed as the human ships lingered near Mars, seemingly poised for the Zanzi ships to return and recommence their assault. But the Zanzi ships were permanently absent. They had retreated. Never before had a full Zanzi fleet been so severely damaged that they were compelled to withdraw. No military race had proven capable of confronting them in battle and matching them toe-to-toe, except, evidently, the humans. The Zanzi leaders were taken aback by this defeat, as an entire full fleet and 4 million servicemen had been reduced to a quarter of their strength due to the efforts of a single planet. Just 400 days prior, they had regarded humans as nothing more than a group of clumsy apes. This unexpected turn of events incited outrage, prompting the Zanzi generals to demand that the flag admiral be reprimanded, executed, or possibly even demoted to midshipman. However, communications with the flagship Dread went unanswered, leading to the presumption that the ship had been destroyed. This situation was even more dire. One of their prized flagships had been lost. These ships were the pinnacle of their fleet, with only 9 in the entire coalition, making the loss unfathomable. The Zanzi began preparations to mobilize their entire military, as the rest of the coalition was reluctant to intervene for various reasons. Their 4 remaining full fleets combined forces and prepared to rendezvous with the survivors of their expeditionary force. Upon arrival, the fleet admirals were greeted with an unexpected revelation. Their prized dreadnought was, in fact, not destroyed. It remained in position, flanked by its supporting carriers and battleships, with all 4 massive planet-killing cannons charged and ready. This revelation also surprised the fleet admirals, as standard protocol dictated that dreadnought cannons should never be kept charged unless one was prepared to fire. Otherwise, the ship's power would be compromised. If your shields were to be depleted, they would fail, and your cooling systems would ultimately cease to function effectively. By the time the 4 Zanzi admirals comprehended the situation, it was already too late. The call for evasive maneuvers to redirect all power to the shields, to charge their own cannons, or to completely abandon ship had been issued. In the chaos, all 4 flagships had neglected to communicate with each other. The dreadnought, facing them, had fired its cannons with impeccable precision. Each massive blast of energy, equivalent to the force of 1,000 nuclear warheads, struck its target directly. Although the explosions did not entirely annihilate the dreadnoughts, they did succeed in depleting their shields, disabling both their main and backup reactors and destroying most of their support vessels in the immediate area. As the 4 flagships lost power and all systems went offline, the admirals observed through the glass windows of their bridges as the 60 human ships, which their colleague had previously confronted in battle, arrived, turned towards the dreadnoughts, and unleashed waves of strikecraft. 4 days later, the Zanzi signed a treaty of unconditional surrender to the newly established Terran Union. They relinquished all of their slaves, surrendered their technology, and declared that they no longer possessed the 5 dreadnoughts that the joint human-Danic military now occupied, hovering ominously over the Zanzi H-world's capital. Never before had anyone dared to confront the most formidable force in the galaxy and turn its own weapons against it. The Zanzi had never experienced a defeat so devastating, a defeat that would forever prevent them from regaining their former might. It appeared that nothing would ever match their previous power, except, of course, the humans.